Hi everybody, welcome back to my kitchen. So I had a few months off over I was going to say over Christmas, over the summer. Ooh, Christmas can't be on the brain yet. It's only September. Um, and I've come back with a brand new recipe. It's not my personal recipe, but over the summer we went down to Barry's sister's place in Moncton, and I was looking through her recipe books and so on, and I found this recipe for banana gingerbread. And it was awesome. So that's what we're making today. I have my trusty helper Caitlin with me, and she's got on my Penny's Kitchen apron, which Barry's sister Sherry made for me, which is awesome. So banana gingerbread, oh, so good. In this bowl, we have our flour, our brown sugar. Now I'm making two, so I'm going to give you the measurements for one, and then we're going to double it, because I had 4 bananas and it only calls for 2 bananas. So you might as well make 2 if you've got 4 bananas, because if you cook once, you can eat twice, which is great. Or throw one in the freezer or give it to a friend, spread the love, it's all good. So in here for one, you would want 1 3/4 cups of flour. So we have 3.5. You would also want 1/2 cup of brown sugar. So we have 1 cup of brown sugar. And we're going to whisk that up. Now, normally you would have your sugar in with your wet ingredients, but not with this particular recipe. Try and get all those lumps and whatnot out of the brown sugar. There we go. Now, to this dry ingredient bowl, we are going to be adding 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon, 1 teaspoon of cloves, and 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Again, those are all double measurements. So we're going to put all those in. Along with that, we have 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 teaspoon of baking soda, and 2.5 of baking powder. Again, those are double measurements. So we're going to put all those together. So while I'm doing this, Caitlin is going to crack 4 eggs into this bowl. Again, that's double, so you'd only need 2 eggs if you were making 1. The oven is preheated to 375. Actually 365, because my oven tends to run a little hot, but the recipe calls for 375. Okay, so while she's doing that, I'm going to go to the large bowl now, which is our main mixing bowl. And I have 1 cup of soft, almost melted butter. There we go. And then I'm going to add the 4 mashed bananas, which Barry was kind enough to mash up for me while I was getting other things ready. It takes a team effort, you know, this Penny's Kitchen deal. It's all good. Okay, so that's our bananas. We're also going to add in, let me get that mixed in a little bit. There we go. We're also going to add in 1/2 cup, and it calls for buttermilk. Now, if you don't have buttermilk, don't worry. It would only be 1/4 cup if you were making 1, but this is 1/2 cup because we're making 2. And I added 1 teaspoon of just the bottled lemon juice. If you don't have lemon juice, you can use white vinegar or apple cider vinegar. Let it sit for 10 or 15 minutes and you'll get the same effect in your baking as buttermilk. It's the acid in the buttermilk that reacts with, I think it's the baking soda in your bread and helps it rise. So that's why it's calling for buttermilk. But I don't normally have buttermilk in the house unless I know I'm going to be baking a lot with it. So that's what I do. There we go. Now, Caitlin has got the eggs on the move. So I am going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Sometimes I add it directly to the eggs, but she's got those under control, so we'll just add them here. There we are. Give that a little bit of a whisk. And now I'm going to add a half a cup of molasses. Again, if you're just making one, you would have a quarter cup of molasses. Thank you, Caitlin. Okay, you're getting it everywhere. All right. There we go. That's grand. Put that over there. You finished with the eggs? You want to put them in here? Yay! All done. Good job. Now she's going to clean up. She is the best cleaner up in the kitchen. All right. So now we are going to add our dry ingredients. And I'm going to do about half at first, because if I add all of that right away, it would be poof, flour going everywhere. So we're just going to take our time, get that mixed in. Make sure you get the sides. There we go. There we go. You don't want to over mix it, so only stir it until it's thoroughly combined and then stop. Don't mix it any more than that. Because if you over mix flour, you develop the gluten, and then that makes it very heavy. Instead of a light and fluffy banana bread or cookie or muffin, you will end up with a heavy, dense banana bread or whatever it is that you're baking. Okay, so we're going to switch over to our spatula because it gets a little thick for the whisk. Oh, here you go, Caitlin. Thank you. And this way too, we can get all the solids. Make sure we don't miss any of the goodness. Oh, it smells so good. And the ginger and the molasses and the cinnamon. Now, if you wanted to add some chopped walnuts or, anything like that, feel free, not a problem. It's all good. Okay, now we're going to put approximately half and half in our two pans. I always end up with one a wee bit bigger than the other. It always happens, but that's okay. It's not a big deal. It's home baking. It's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be filled with love and goodness. And that's what we have. Two pans filled with love and goodness. And yes, one is bigger than the other, but that's all good. Okay. So I'm going to put those in the oven, and they have to be in the oven for between 55 to 60 minutes. So check them at around 50-55 minutes and see how they're doing. Then you want to let them sit in the pan when you take them out for a good 10, if not 15 minutes before you take them out and put them on a cooling rack. So when we're ready for that step, I'll be back. Really good and still warm. Banana gingerbread, delicious. So you preheat your oven to 375 for one loaf, 1 3/4 cup of flour, half a cup of brown sugar. The original recipe called for 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar. The original recipe called for 2.5 teaspoons of ground ginger. I only put in 2. 2.5 cups of cinnamon, or teaspoons, sorry. Cinnamon, I only put in 2. 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. 3/4 of a cup of salt. I only put in half. Half a teaspoon of ground cloves. And it called for half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg, but I only put in 1/4. And a half a teaspoon of soda. 1 cup of chopped nuts, that's optional. So that's all your dry ingredients. In the larger bowl, your wet ingredients is a half a cup of butter, pretty much melted, 2 bananas mashed, 2 large eggs beaten, a quarter cup of buttermilk. Remember, a quarter cup, you put in a half a teaspoon of lemon juice or vinegar if you don't have buttermilk. A quarter cup of molasses, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Mix it all up. Bake it for between 55 to 60 minutes. At the end, if you want to put a glaze on top, which I'm not going to, but 1.5 cups of powdered sugar with 3 tablespoons of milk, and then just take a spoon and drizzle it over the top. It would be awesome. But I'm going to do it maybe another day, but not today, because I want to be able to enjoy this too. So this year, we're going to make a little change. We're going to send you videos like this on the 15th and the 30th instead of weekly. So the 15th and 30th of every month. And in between there, every now and then we'll send you some little snippet videos, like a minute or so long. So hopefully that's more manageable for us. You still get to enjoy the videos. We still get to enjoy bringing them to you. And hopefully it all works out. I hope you give this recipe a go. Bye!